Welcome back to The Verdict. On today's episode, we'll be looking back at some of our favorite Pixar movies, so stay tuned. Hey everyone, my name is Jasmine, and today I'm joined by my co-hosts Hugh and Will. The movie I chose was Ratatouille from 2007. The movie stars Patton Oswalt, Lou Romano, and Lindsay Collins. Let's watch that trailer.
Are you thinking what I'm thinking? We just need to work out a system so that I do what you want.
Stop that!
Stop what?
Freaking me out!
Ooh.
I want to make things, Dad.
Stay away from the humans. It's dangerous. Now shut up and eat your garbage.
How did you do that?
Just once in a lifetime.
Let's do this thing!
Man knows a moment.
You gotta taste this! You detect that? An oaky nuttiness?
Oh, I'm detecting.
So guys, I am so glad I got to pick this movie for today. It is genuinely one of my favorite childhood movies of all time. I adore the little mouse Remy so much and all of his amazing little chef skills, and I wanted my own Remy growing up because of this movie. What did you guys think?
I as well loved this movie as a child, and it's nice to come back and rewatch this every once in a while. I think I watched the other two probably more because they were more action packed, and I was a little probably 9 or 10 when this came out, but I definitely watched this movie a substantial lot for that time. And it's a classic. It's one of Pixar's best. In my opinion.
Totally agree.
We're starting strong with you today, America. I hope you're enjoying this. What do you think about this, Will?
I mean, for me personally, this movie is probably easily top 3, top 5 for me of all time. Just because I love the music, I love the scenery, I love the voice acting, I love everything about it. And I think, unfortunately, I don't think we really get a lot of that classic Pixar anymore.
Yeah, I agree. This is sort of that golden age of we can do anything with the music and the scenery, and it all looks so good. I mean, think about it with 2008, this still holds up as a movie from so long ago. The animation doesn't really look flawed in any way. I love that opening sequence too when he goes into Paris. He comes in and he's scurrying through. They pass by the couple. The guy shoots at it, or her, or vice versa. But and then she scurries around through all that, just all these little pieces of Paris there for you. It's fantastic. Yeah. It's beautiful, beautiful.
I agree. I think the landscape of Paris in the movie was beautiful, but for me, even just that opening scene with that older woman who's practically blind with her big focal glasses and who's struggling to get that shotgun to get rid of these mice that are pestering her. I mean, that scene is so chaotic and just, in my opinion, iconic.
Without realizing it too, because they just fall on top of her. This poor woman.
Can you imagine just hundreds and hundreds of mice falling from your ceiling? Honestly, that's a little terrifying. Maybe her shotgun reaction wasn't over dramatic. Maybe that's valid,
Oh, yeah, no.
But for me personally, I think what they were able to do with a story about a mouse that, wants to go against the status quo with his, mice family and cook and do something different, I thought was just really beautiful.
Yeah, there's a lot of angles to this part of the story too, right? Because there's the whole angle of trying to actually work in a restaurant as a rat is almost impossible.
Of course.
And then there's the dad who is telling him you need to be like a rat because people treat us like rats, And so there's a lot of different angles onto this same message of no, anyone can do anything, It's sort of like a laissez-faire type of message of do what you want to do what inspires you and compels you to do something.
Follow your passions, even if people think that it's not something that's meant for you. If it's something that you love, something that you innately just really enjoy and think about all the time, go for it. Who cares about, in my opinion, I take my family's advice for sure, okay, and their opinions are totally valid, right? But if I'm passionate about broadcast like I am, nobody's going to get in my way from pursuing that because it's what I love. And I really appreciate in this movie that, like you said, a mouse who, no one wants a mouse in the kitchen, right? But he overcomes those odds and he finds a way to follow his dreams. And I think that's really admirable. His family was totally unsupportive, at least in the beginning.
Yeah, they do come around really well, I would say. It's a pretty interesting, sort of turnaround for that dynamic. I don't know. What do you think? It's sort of hard when it comes to these great Pixar movies because, like, there's so much to be said about the scenery and about the music, about the characters, about the little instances. I love the chef who was talking about how he killed everybody with this thumb and how and how he
story
defrauded.
Changes every time.
Yeah, the story changes every time. I like how it's a weird kind of for Pixar movie because it feels more mature of a movie than most other Pixar. It's more mature, I would say, than Incredibles or Cars would be, that I would say.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think I would actually put, in terms of the messaging, on par with Cars, for me personally. Ratatouille is really personal to me. I actually grew up with food allergies, so the phrase "anyone can cook," I was like, oh, okay. I didn't really think much about it. But then as you get older, you're like, oh, wow. And I think it wasn't meant to be as empowering as it is, but I think as it's aged, it's only gotten more relevant.
I agree with that.
I totally agree. And I think even his name always slips my mind. It's the redheaded, curly-haired chef.
Linguini.
Yes, Linguini.
Although I think that's his last name. I don't know if that's his first name or not, because I was watching through this movie.
I think it's Gusteau. Gusteau's the cook.
Gusteau's the cook that died. But Linguini's the son of Gusteau, and his mom is the one that sent the note that the sous chef was freaking out over and all of that. But in that note, I was looking when I was watching it this time around that, like, in the top, her name is like Annetta Linguini.
Oh, okay.
So I wonder if I guess
so
everybody calls him by his last name. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So I wonder what his actual first name is. That's what I want to go back and figure out on my next rewatch of this movie, because I will watch this again. I am 26 years old, but I will watch this movie without children, for the rest of my life. So
I agree. It's just that great of a movie. And for me, Linguini, his character was also really interesting. He's trying to kind of follow his family's legacy in a sense, and that's kind of why he goes to this place to start cooking, and it's something that doesn't really feel natural to him at first, and he really struggles with it. But with the helping hand of Remy, he kind of finds his place in there, and he becomes a lot more comfortable. And I just think that was a great storyline too. It was very different from Remy, who had this innate passion, like cooking came from him. But then we have Linguini, who it didn't come to him easily, but he was still able to figure it out and progress on that journey.
I agree with that. Yeah, there's a good bit of there's a lot of cool little characters to this. I mean, we haven't even talked about the villain of this story, Ego. All done Ego. It's one of the greatest villains possibly in all of Pixar. But I mean, but for all these reasons, I would say this might be the best Pixar movie.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's my personal favorite Pixar movie, but it is one of the very few movies that I can rate a solid 10, because I don't really find anything that I don't like about this.
I totally agree. What would you rate it, Will?
I don't believe in perfect, but I would say it's probably like an 8 for me, personally.
Okay.
That's
so
valid.
you like to low ball them a little bit too.
Well, I mean, I think we also got to talk about very quickly, but like the memes that came out from Pixar movies are still used all the time.
That's very true.
Like him cutting up the envelope, freaking out. Like people use that still.
Yeah. For me personally, I would also give this movie a 10. I mean, it is just one of my favorite movies from childhood, and one that I feel like left a really good impression on me. But let's talk about your movie now, Hugh.
Oh, yes. This is a movie I probably have watched more than any other movie in existence. The movie I'm choosing for you, ladies and gentlemen, today is The Incredibles. This movie stars Craig T. Nelson, Holly Hunter, and the fabulous Samuel L. Jackson. Let's watch that trailer if you haven't seen it before.
Showtime.
The supers aren't gone. You can still do great things.
Wait, they're saving the world to the men?
Honey, where's my super suit?
Why do you need to know? I don't think so.
Your suit can stretch as far as you can and still retain its shape. Virtually indestructible. Machine washable, darling. That's a new feature.
Can't beat Edna. Edna's one of the greatest characters in this entire studio's history. Her at the end there, that whole scene of her talking with Elastigirl is, I think that might be, I'm going to go ahead and say that on the show, this is my favorite Pixar scene of all time. The costumes, the gunfire, the fire, the explosions. This whole movie is a riot. I have so much to discuss about this movie. What is your thoughts about this, Will?
I'm with you in terms of Edna. I think, in my opinion, she's probably one of the more unintentionally, probably intentionally, but unintentionally comical characters.
Yeah.
At least for us, I know at our household, like we quote Edna, no capes, darling.
It's like, yeah,
no capes.
No capes.
But yeah, I mean, even similar to Ratatouille, like everything still holds up.
Yeah.
Even with the sequel. They really didn't change the style, and I don't think they really needed to. I think they struck gold with the way they directed it, the music, actually even the motives behind why people did what they did were so different and also so interesting.
Yeah.
I would probably rate it like I don't like doing halves. I do like 7.5 or 8.
Oh, wow.
Again, for me.
Okay.
For the first one.
For the first one.
See, that's interesting
Wow.
because I feel like the first one has created such a following and such a fan base. You know, people genuinely loved The Incredibles and they were so excited to get a sequel, right? And I feel like the sequel got, unfortunately, a lot of hate. I feel like, you know, it was built up so much because the first one was so iconic. And as you said, Edna is so hilarious. I absolutely adore her. I mean, she's such a diva, right? She always speaks her mind, and I respect that. I adore Edna.
Would you like a curveball? Edna is actually voice acted by the director, who is a full-on man.
Oh.
So that voice is not actually European woman. It is the director. I think it's
Brad Birch?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I found that recently.
Who also did Ratatouille, too.
Yeah.
I found that out recently, and both me and my mom were like, no!
I totally get what you mean.
But I don't think anyone can deny Edna as a character.
No one can deny Edna. No one should deny this movie. Let's be honest. The one of the things about this movie is just that it's like the greatest secret island base of all time. You know, the way everybody moves around on this secret island is just incredible. What do you think about the secret island base?
I think the secret island is so funny. I mean, so Mr. Incredible leaves his family. He goes on this like secret mission. He doesn't even tell his wife, who is also a superhero. I think that was uncalled for, disrespectful. His whole family has these amazing abilities. Why wouldn't you want to bring them into the fold and, you know, make the mission more successful? I think that, you know, him not being a superhero for a period of time really affected his character development in that way. And I think it was so interesting to see him go from that feeling just really down and feeling like, you know, he had to, I almost got the sense that he felt like emasculated in a sense
a little bit,
by his job and having to be a normal person and not given these abilities that he was gifted with. And so he goes to the island, he goes through this journey, and, you know, going there, he realized that his strength lies in his family, right? And I thought that was a very beautiful storyline. I enjoyed that development from him.
Yeah, it's like you're showing the great, beautiful, sort of the messed up world of like when a man gets older and they start like pondering their death. Did they do enough for their life? And there's this midlife crisis sort of thing. And I think this movie shows that really well as a superhero perspective. Now that the superheroes are all gone and they're not allowed to be seen really in public. They have to keep to the shadows. They have to keep to their secret identities. And I also love the genuine pureness of the two married individuals, Elastigirl and Mr. Incredible, who they don't really communicate terribly well in this movie, but they're both like doing it for the right reasons at the end of the day in this one. So the characters of this movie, I think they're the most fun of any Pixar movie too. Dash and Violet are really fun. I love how they get their little time to shine not individually, but like together in this movie. And and then they actually never made a sequel. Fun fact: the sequel actually was lost to. It was a psyop. We all had a nightmare back in, what was it, 2016,
Oh my
2017?
Gosh, the sequel was not that bad.
I think you're thinking of Finding Dory.
I'm talking about Incredibles 2.
Yeah, I'm actually giving it a little too much hate than it needs to.
It was good. It wasn't, again, a lot of people who loved the first one and waited so long for a second one and got so hyped and they were so into it. I mean, of course, if you put all those expectations on it, it's not going to live up to the hype. And most people actually don't enjoy sequels as much as the original.
Yeah.
That's just how it is. But I think if you judged it on its own and not compared to the first one, there were some redeeming parts of that movie that I really enjoyed. Was the whole thing perfect? Absolutely not. But what movie is?
True. But my only problem with that movie, one of my main problems with that movie is that I think it would be believable for me, the storyline and all that, if this wasn't made 13 years after the first movie. We're going right into literally the moment after the end of the first movie. It's like, could there not have been anything that happened through all this? Like, they just got back and they let them breathe for a little bit. Like, I don't know.
Fair.
It would have been more fair if it felt like it was a syndrome, like planted seeds for an uprising again right after or something. But it's a new villain. It's the twist at the end doesn't really sell me. Like, how does Elastigirl fall for that? You know what I'm talking about, America. And like, I don't know. I think some of the spirit of that movie just wasn't quite there for me. But I don't know. It's fine. It's fine. Watch it if you want to. I can't control what you do with your leisure time, but I appreciate you watching me give my spiel about that because it messed me up. I'll tell you that much. It was not fun.
For me personally, I understand there were some parts of that movie that maybe didn't blend as well with the original. They did kind of take a different step with some of the characters, as Will mentioned, right? But another thing is Jack in both movies, without a doubt, was absolutely hilarious, and I enjoy his performance. And so for me personally, I would rate this movie a 9 out of 10 for the first one. I think it's amazing.
Okay, so you had a 9 out of 10. You had a 7.5. Yeah, so I'm going to go combine both of your two. I have a 9.75.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, now we're going to move on to your movie, Will.
Right. I am actually going to be talking about Cars, that was made in 2007. Owen Wilson is in it. I know that there are a couple of others, Bonnie Hunt and Larry the Cable Guy for Tow Mater. Let's go ahead and check out the trailer.
What's so important about this race of yours?
I've been dreaming about it my whole life.
A guy who thought he had it all is about to discover everything he's been missing.
I knowed I made a good choice.
In what?
My best friend.
There's a lot of love out there, man.
Now, I probably watched this movie the second most out of any movie when I was growing up. I also, yeah. What made you bring this to the table?
I'm sorry, who doesn't love cars? Like, simple.
Good
simple,
answer.
Simple. Sometimes they're elegant, sometimes they're made for speed. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a very big Cars 2 person. Although we're not talking about Cars 2, but Cars 1. But I think that maybe -3, the third movie in the trilogy, I really loved Cars, the franchise. It's simple, it's fun, it knows what it wants to be, it gives simple little like moral lessons, and I just appreciated it. I mean, and the music, obviously.
That's interesting. We should talk about Cars 2 sometime on another episode because I would love to hear your thoughts on that, because I personally actually like 3 better than 2, but I mean, to each their own. The first one, however, what spawned this franchise from the get-go, I think there's a lot of early Pixar in there, and a lot of what you could see possibly coming from Pixar later. Definitely, this feels like the most merchandisable. Well, I don't know. Incredibles is a bunch of superheroes, so I guess they're both pretty merchandisable. But they're definitely, this felt like a little bit less of less of what you would see from the old Pixar movies, and more of what was to come, but still pretty. I love this movie. It's fun and enjoyable.
Yeah, Cars is a classic. Like you said, it's more of a simple plot, right? We got a race car, and he kind of takes a hit. He's used to winning, Mr. Lightning McQueen, right? Absolute icon. And, he kind of has to go on this journey of self-discovery. And I feel like, in a sense, like by the end of the movie, it wasn't just about winning, right? He found more of that outside of himself. And I think that's an amazing storyline. I like the way it developed.
Yeah, he's so mean to everybody at the very beginning of this movie. He's mean to the crew chief, he's mean to everybody, but this movie also creates a character that's so unlikable that you have to cheer for Lightning McQueen, I think, a little bit in Mr. Kachiga. But I think he does go through like this really big like personal transformation, I think, in this movie. It feels more like a sports movie, honestly, than a Pixar movie, which is kind of as a compliment in this case, because the whole metaphor, like, it's just an empty cup, it's a stupid trophy, it's a good message. It's a good message as a sports movie, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And as a former athlete myself, I can relate to that in a sense. Growing up, I mean, who doesn't love winning and feeling like you've put in your best and you've achieved what you came to achieve, but unfortunately, there are going to be times when you give your 110% best effort in a game and you don't get the result that you want and you lose. And there is a place in life to be able to grapple with that and not be a sore loser, to lose gracefully and know that, I left everything on the court, I left everything on the field, I gave my best, and that's what matters, right? Not the trophy.
Yeah. One thing I want to say before we wrap this up, since you shared with us earlier how Brad, what was his name again?
Brad Birch?
Brad Birch? Brad Birch. The director of Incredibles, being the voice of Edna. Another funny thing that comes with this movie, I don't know if you knew this, but the Dynaco driver is Richard Petty. The King, the longtime NASCAR race driver who has like 6 of the Winston Cups, which is what the Piston Cup is based on.
There's also the ending scene at the end with, I believe it was a Ferrari F1 driver. They did like a cameo with, where they went to Radiator Springs.
Yeah, isn't it Schumacher, I believe, or one of those guys. Like I'm not very familiar.
Oh yeah, F1, I mean, there's so many cool scenes in this movie. I mean, this first Cars movie is a classic, just like the other Pixar movies we talked about. So let's go ahead and rate it. I want to see how you guys rate this compared to the others.
I would have to give this, I can't give this a 9. I think there's a little bit in there that I wanted a bit more out of this, because you're putting it up in the expectations against other Pixar movies. But I think I would put this at about, I'm going to give it a 7, because I feel bad if I give it as high. I rate movies too high. I think that's my problem, actually. What do you think?
I'm gonna be honest. I'm torn between 8 or 9 for me personally.
Higher than wow.
I would say because I don't know. It's so like the amount of times I would replay "Life Is a Highway" the song over and over. So I'll just be fair. I'll say 8 for me.
That's understandable.
Life is a Highway is a great song. Life is a
I
Highway.
agree.
Yeah, that song slapped when I was a kid. I feel like I remember listening to that over and over again as well too. That soundtrack, that Cars soundtrack, really spoke volumes back then in the day.
For sure, the soundtrack is very memorable, and I think that's something we didn't really touch on per se with the other movies, but I think Ratatouille had a nice soundtrack as well, and Incredibles had a very fun soundtrack too. I enjoyed it, but for me personally, I'm gonna rate Cars a solid 8. I enjoyed it. It's an amazing movie, but compared to Ratatouille and Incredibles, I feel like I watch it just a little bit less. But that's all we have for you guys today. Thanks for watching this episode of The Verdict. Make sure to tune in next week for another episode. We'll see you then.